The nation has been waiting for the announcement of the new cabinet, and the press secretary in the presidency is with me now in the studio to share more information. Good evening, Dr. Hengari. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
The anticipation was quite high. A lot of people, Namibians, are interested to hear who will be the country's next ministers. Some notable changes, but also some of the ministers have retained their positions, such as the Deputy Prime Minister of the Republic of Namibia, Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah, retaining her position as the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation. Let me first ask you this question. Surely a lot of thought went into the President coming up with this list. Tell us more about that.
Certainly, a lot of thought went into the preparation of cabinet. It's a very complex process. The president is inclusive, consulted widely, and today we have a final list of cabinet ministers, 19 who will head specific ministries, making a total of 22. Out of that, there are many notable improvements in terms of the gender ratio, as President Gengo promised. We have 8 out of the 22 being women. From deputy ministers, it's a massive improvement. 12 out of 17 deputy ministers are women. Mm-hmm. So this is a promise that the president made, and a promise kept in so many ways.
I just want to also alert the listener or the viewers, I just want to give them an idea of some of the announcement, and you could perhaps share some of those. As I said earlier, Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah, and her Deputy Minister, Jenely Matundu. Ministry of Home Affairs, Frans Kapofi, retaining that position. His Deputy, Daniel Kashikola. Ministry of Defence and Veterans Affairs, this was a ministry that was merged. Honourable Rear Admiral Peter Hafenivilo and his deputy Hilma Nikanor. Ministry of Finance, Ipumbushimi. Dr. Hengari, he comes from the list of 8 that was also announced by the President?
That is correct. The President also announced earlier today the list of 8 nominees for Parliament who are non-voting members. But in constructing that list, the President looked at specific issues as per the Constitution, regional representation, skills, experience, status in society, and so on. And that list perfectly respects those type of considerations. And also, most important, I should mention here, there the President achieved a remarkable feat in terms of gender, 50-50 representation.
A lot of the people that are on the list are also ministers and deputy ministers. Ipumbushimi, of course, who up to yesterday was the minister of the governor of the Bank of Namibia.
That is correct. As we know, Mr. Ipumbushimi is the governor of the central bank, so a highly experienced and technical person to run a very important ministry, which is finance. So once again, it's an important skill that the President is bringing to government, which is going to advance our agenda without question.
I'm sure a lot of Namibians are also wondering about Kelly Schlatwein, who was the former Minister of Finance. He is now the Minister of Agriculture, Water and Land Reform, and he is deputized by Anna Shibweda. But there are some of the portfolios in terms of Deputy Minister that has not been filled, notably so Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Higher Education, that has not yet been filled, Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism, Ministry of Justice, as well as the Ministry of Public Enterprises. Any reasons?
Well, the President will make a determination as it stands now. These are the appointments that the President made on the basis of specific considerations. Also, if there's a need to appoint, that's for the President to decide. But what is important now is that a number of targets have been met in terms of gender, especially on the 8 nominees. With regard to cabinet itself, a very serious improvement from where cabinet was in the last administration, where the last count was about 3 cabinet members were female, and we are standing at 8 now, so that's a big improvement. It's also important to emphasize here, Francis, that we have in this country a hybrid political system. One where the president draws cabinet from members of the National Assembly or from Parliament, broadly speaking. So that in itself is clear in terms of the Constitution. So the president cannot appoint people from other spaces, as in some of the jurisdiction where the president has leeway to appoint members of cabinet from wherever. In Namibia, you have to be a member of the National Assembly or Parliament, broadly speaking, for you to be appointed into the executive. So I think at times there's confusion in terms of how the president selects members of the executive. We have a system that is clear. It's a hybrid system, presidential but also parliamentary. So the president draws cabinet from those chambers.
I quickly want to highlight one specific appointment. Interestingly enough, last week when the president was engaging the press, these were just some of the questions that came up, choosing somebody from the opposition to be in the president's cabinet. We have somebody from the opposition, the president of NUDO, Esther Munyangwe, as the Deputy Minister of Health and Social Services.
That is correct. Francis, you must have listened yesterday attentively to the president's inaugural speech. Unity, transparency, inclusiveness. So that appointment
is a reflection.
It's a reflection, it's a sort of reflection of the president's vision for a far more united Namibia, where people with skills can contribute positively to the development agenda of this country. And the appointment of the president of NUDO as Deputy Minister of Social Health, of Health and Social Services, is a clear reflection of that. She has a PhD in social work, so a tangible contribution to the developmental agenda of this country. President Gengob is very clear that for us to make this country a better one, we must hold hands, we must all pull in the same direction. So that appointment clearly reflects that vision.
Dr. Hengari, thank you so much for having joined us. I'm sure we'll be engaging with one another a lot more on NBC platforms. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And also towards the end of this bulletin, we'll give you an indication of the other eight whose names you haven't heard necessarily in the ministers and the deputy ministers'